The rain had just stopped when I heard it. A thin, broken sound, almost swallowed by the drip of water off the power lines. I slowed the car without really deciding to. My hands were still on the wheel, but my foot had already found the brake. At first I told myself it was birds. Nothing else moves at that hour on a road this empty. But the sound came again, thinner this time, more desperate, and something in my chest told me birds don't cry like that. I pulled over. The pavement was slick and dark, streetlights throwing long reflections across puddles that hadn't drained yet. I stepped out into air that still smelled like wet asphalt and turned earth. That's when I saw them, tucked against the curb where the storm drain met the gutter. Two small shapes, barely bigger than my palm, pressed together like they were trying to become one animal instead of two, soaked, trembling, alone. I didn't know yet that this moment, on this road, at this hour, was about to rearrange everything I thought I understood about my own life. I just knew I couldn't drive away. One kitten, gray and small-boned, had positioned itself slightly in front of the other. Its eyes kept cutting down the empty road, back toward where the streetlight faded into darkness, like it was still waiting for someone, watching, hoping. Every few seconds it would let out that same thin cry, and then go quiet, and then cry again. The other one didn't move at all. White, or what used to be white under all that mud and rain, it lay curled so tightly I almost mistook it for a piece of trash the storm had washed up. When I crouched down, it didn't flinch, didn't lift its head, just breathed, slow and shallow, its ribs rising in small, uneven waves. I looked up and down the road. No houses close by, no cars, no sign of a mother cat anywhere, no answering call from the bushes, nothing. I waited. I told myself she'd come back any minute. Mother cats don't just leave. I stood there in the cooling air, watching the gray one watch the road, for the better part of an hour. I checked the drainage ditch. I walked the tree line along the empty lot next door. I knocked on the door of the one house with a porch light still on, and the woman who answered just shook her head and said she'd never seen any cats around here, sorry. By the time I walked back, the gray kitten had stopped looking down the road. It had turned instead toward its sibling, nudging the still white body with its nose, over and over, the way you'd shake someone awake. Small pink mouth opening in a silent cry I could barely hear anymore. That was the moment I stopped waiting for a mother who wasn't coming. I peeled off my jacket and wrapped them both inside it, so gently I was afraid I'd break something just by lifting them. The gray one tensed for a second, claws pricking faintly through the fabric, and then went still against my chest. The white one didn't react at all. I found an old shoebox in the trunk, lined it with a spare towel, and set them inside on the passenger seat. Two pairs of eyes, one alert, one barely open, looking up at me like I was the only solid thing left in the world. I started the engine and pulled back onto the road, my mind already racing through everything I didn't have. No kitten formula, no heating pad, no idea if the white one would even make it through the night. Halfway home, the gray kitten's soft, steady mewing suddenly stopped. I glanced down at the box on the seat beside me, and my stomach dropped. Both of them had gone completely silent. The silence in that box lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like the longest stretch of the whole night. I pulled over again, hazards clicking, and lifted the lid with my heart hammering. Two small chests, still rising, just barely. I exhaled and drove the rest of the way home with one hand on the wheel, and my eyes flicking to the seat beside me every few seconds. Inside, I moved fast. Old towels from the hall closet, warmed for a few seconds in the dryer, a heating pad set on low, wrapped so it wouldn't burn through fur this thin. I laid them both down in a nest of blankets in a laundry basket by the radiator, and for the first time since the roadside, I let myself really look at them. The gray one lifted its head almost immediately, sniffing at the warmth, pressing its small body into the blanket like it was trying to disappear into it. The white one didn't move. I mixed kitten formula with shaking hands, following instructions I'd found in a panic online, and tried the smallest bottle I owned against the white kitten's mouth. Nothing. It turned its head away, too weak to even protest properly. The gray one, though, latched on almost instantly, drinking in short, frantic pulls, then pausing every few seconds to nudge its sibling's face with its nose, as if trying to say, "Come on, eat, please eat." That first night I didn't sleep. Every 2 hours I was back on the floor beside that basket, warming formula, coaxing the white kitten to take even a few drops, cleaning them, checking their breathing. Somewhere around 4 in the morning, exhausted and running on nothing but fear, I heard it. a sound so small I almost missed it. A rough, stuttering purr, coming from the gray kitten as I stroked its head with one finger. It was the first sound either of them had made that wasn't a cry. By morning I knew the white kitten needed more than I could give it at home. The vet's office wasn't even open yet when I got there. Dehydrated, underweight, temperature too low, the vet said, in that calm voice they use when they don't want you to panic even though you already are. Fluids, medication, a feeding schedule so strict I set alarms through the night. For 2 days it could have gone either way. I watched that kitten more closely than I've ever watched anything in my life, waiting for some sign it was fighting instead of fading. The gray one wouldn't leave its side, curling against its sibling's smaller body every time I set them down together, like it was standing guard. Then, on the third morning, everything changed. I offered the bottle out of habit more than hope, and the white kitten turned toward it, latched on, drank, slow and clumsy at first, then steadier, its throat working in small determined swallows. I sat there on the kitchen floor and cried, the kind of crying that sneaks up on you when you didn't know how much you'd been holding. After that, things moved fast. Both kittens started gaining weight, ounce by ounce, their ribs disappearing under new softness. Their mews grew louder, more insistent, more like actual demands instead of desperate pleas. The white kitten took its first wobbly steps across the kitchen floor, tumbling into the gray one's side, and for a moment they just lay there together, a tangle of paws and tails, alive. One morning, almost 2 weeks after that rainy roadside, I sat down on the couch with my coffee, and before I'd even settled in I felt it, a small weight climbing onto my leg, then another, both kittens, together curling into my lap like it was the most natural place in the world to be. I sat perfectly still, afraid that moving even slightly might break the spell. They weren't just surviving anymore. Somewhere between the third bottle feeding and the first wobbly steps across the kitchen floor, the fear started to fade. What replaced it happened so gradually I almost missed it, the way you don't notice a season changing until one day you look outside and everything looks different. Their eyes brightened first. That dull, glassy look from those early days gave way to something sharp and curious, tracking dust motes in the afternoon light, following my hand across the room like it was the most interesting thing in the world. Their fur, once matted and thin, grew soft and full, the gray one's coat deepening into something almost silver, the white one growing thick and plush like a cloud that had learned to walk. They learned to run before they really learned to walk properly, all 4 legs going in slightly different directions, crashing into furniture, sliding across the hardwood floor in the hallway like it was made of ice. I'd watch them chase a crumpled piece of paper from one end of the living room to the other, skidding, tumbling, starting again like the fall never happened. The house started to feel different too, smaller somehow, the way a house does when something living fills every corner of it. The curtains became a mountain to conquer. I came home one afternoon to find the gray kitten halfway up the living room drapes, clinging with the kind of stubborn determination that made me laugh instead of scold. The white one preferred hiding, and its favorite spot turned out to be the inside of my shoes, curled up so perfectly I nearly stepped on it more than once before I learned to check first. Socks disappeared constantly. I'd find them dragged under the couch, buried in the laundry basket, hidden inside an old cardboard box that had somehow become the single most contested piece of real estate in the entire house. They fought over that box daily, one climbing in while the other tried to shove its way inside too. Both of them eventually just squeezed in together, tails hanging over the edge. Wherever I went, they followed, into the kitchen, down the hallway, right up to the bathroom door, waiting. But there was one afternoon that stayed with me differently than the rest. I drove back to that same stretch of road, the one with the curb and the storm drain, carrying a small dish of food. I told myself it was just in case their mother was still out there somewhere, still looking. I left the food and waited a while, watching the empty road the same way that Gray Kitten once had. I went back 3 more times over the following weeks. Each time the food sat untouched. Each time I drove home a little quieter than before. Eventually I stopped going back. Not because I'd given up hope exactly, but because I'd started to understand something else instead. Wherever she was, whatever had happened, these two weren't waiting for her to return anymore. They didn't need to be found. They already had somewhere they belonged. I remember crouching down in the living room that evening, both kittens tumbling over each other nearby, and quietly telling them what I probably should have said the very first night, that they'd always have a home now, that whatever happened on that road, it wasn't the end of their story, it was just the beginning of a different one. The neighbors started to know them by name. The older couple next door began saving up little bits of conversation just to ask how the babies were doing. Even the neighbor's old dog, gruff and unimpressed with most things, eventually let the gray kitten sleep curled against his side on warm afternoons. We marked 1 year since that rainy roadside with nothing more than an extra can of their favorite food and a quiet evening on the couch, but it felt like it deserved more than that. It felt like a small, private kind of anniversary. These days, when they hear my key in the front door, there's no more hiding, no more trembling in some corner. They come running, both of them, skidding around the corner from the kitchen, tails high, voices loud and demanding in a way that has nothing left of that thin, frightened cry from the roadside. They aren't waiting for anyone to come back anymore. They're just happy someone came home. Sometimes I still catch myself staring at them, mid-afternoon light spilling across the living room floor, and I have to remind myself that these are the same 2 animals I found soaked and shaking beside an empty road. The gray one has grown into himself now, long and lean, with a confidence that shows in the way he claims the highest spot on every piece of furniture like it was always his. The white one turned out softer in temperament than she ever let on those first few days, quick to curl up against anyone who sits still long enough, purring before you've even finished reaching for her. They fill the house with a kind of noise I never had before. Not chaos exactly, just presence. The thump of paws down the hallway at 6 in the morning, the rattle of a toy mouse skittering under the couch, 2 sets of eyes appearing in doorways at exactly the moment I open a bag of anything that crinkles. I think about that first night more than people probably assume. I keep the old towel from the shoebox in a drawer, the one I wrapped them in on the drive home, though I couldn't really tell you why. Maybe because it's easier to hold on to proof that something so small and fragile actually made it. I look at pictures sometimes, the ones from that very first vet visit, 2 impossibly tiny bodies barely filling the frame, eyes half closed, fur still damp. Then I look up from my phone and see them now, stretched out together on the windowsill, in a patch of sun, and the distance between those 2 images still catches me off guard. It wasn't luck that got them here. I want to be honest about that. There were nights I wasn't sure the white kitten would make it until morning. There were moments of real fear, the kind that sits heavy in your chest and doesn't leave even after the danger passes. What got them here was patience, mostly. Small, repeated acts of care that didn't feel like much in any single moment. A bottle here, a warm towel there, but added up to something enormous over time. I've thought a lot about what people mean when they say rescuing an animal changes you. I used to assume it was just something people said, a nice sentiment to put under a photo online. I don't think that anymore. Before that rainy afternoon, my days had a certain shape to them, quiet in a way I'd stopped noticing. I came home to an empty house and didn't think much of it. Now I come home to 2 small bodies pressed against the door before I've even got my key all the way in, and I've realized how much I'd been missing without knowing it. That's the part nobody warns you about. You go looking to save something, and somewhere along the way, without quite noticing when it happened, you find out it was saving you too. As the sun goes down most evenings, they end up in the same spot, curled together on the couch beside me. The gray one usually draped half over his sister like he's still keeping watch the way he did that very first night on the road. She doesn't seem to mind. She never really did. It's strange to think that 2 tiny crying kittens once sat abandoned on a cold curb, waiting for someone who was never coming back. Stranger still to think that the someone who did come wasn't looking for anything that day except to get home before the roads got worse. I softly said it to them once, not expecting anyone to hear or understand, just needing to say it out loud. That rainy afternoon, I thought I was rescuing 2 helpless kittens. Looking back now, I think they rescued me too. If this story touched your heart, give it a like, subscribe, and join us for more incredible rescue stories, where every life deserves a second chance.